It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Chaya Subar.
My story starts in Nadwona, Poland, where I was born, April 18th, 1940. From the time that I was born until I was a year and a half, my mother tried to find a Christian family who would be willing to take me, because she already had heard. Not all believed what they heard, but my mother did, that what was happening to our people. So she thought, at least give her daughter a chance to survive. No one was willing to take me because my grandparents were very prominent Jews in their community in Nadwona. Everybody knew them, and no one wanted to risk taking a Jewish child. After a year and a half, my mother contacted her husband, this was 1941 now, who was a partisaner in the forests, and said, Yossel, I've tried for a year and a half, nobody wants her, I don't know what to do. And so Yossel was lamenting with a colleague of his in the forest, a partisaner as well. I have a daughter, and my wife has been trying to find someone to take her. No one's willing, I don't know what to do. So this man said, I think I have a family that would be willing to take her. You go get your daughter, and we'll go to this family. And that's exactly what happened. My father came back to Nadwona, took me, and mother would not go with him because her parents were still living. And so he took me to the forest, and with this gentleman, we went to a village called Dębszczyzna, which is a village near Lublin. And he introduced this man, his name, Patek or Paterik, I don't remember now, one of the two, introduced us to Karolina and Stanislav Klimek. And this man said, this gentleman would like to find a home for this little girl. And they looked at me and they said, yes, we would be thrilled to have this little girl. So my father said to them, then you have to understand what the facts are. The facts are, I'm a Jew, and this is my daughter. Based on what I have seen and heard, I doubt if any of the adults will survive. But at least have her a chance, give her a chance. So she's yours, only under one condition. If by some miracle someone survives the end of the war and comes to reclaim her, you will have to give her back. Yes, yes, no, of course. Okay. He took this woman's name, address, gave my mother a copy of the name and address. He went back to the forest to rejoin the partisaners. His job in the partisaners, by the way, was to take people that tried to escape the slaughter into safer countries. That was his job, to relocate, to find safer places for the Jews that wanted to run. But it wasn't only Jews. Any human being. My mother's eyes, which is my father's eyes, were a human being is a human being. Yeah. And you help whoever needs help. And my mother, at home, because her parents were still living. Her father, who was, well, my mother used to say he was the richest Jew in Nadwona. I found out just a few years ago, he was the second richest Jew in Nadwona. And I'll explain why in a moment. And he had to go to Stanislav, the city, to take care of business. He was in Stanislav one fine day, taking care of his business, and the Gestapo were already roaming the streets. And here's a Jew with a beard down to here. Come here, Jude. And they take him, one side of the beard, and cut the knife to the bone of the cheek. Now this was a Jew, Nadvorne Chassid, who, when in the beginning you were still able to escape the work camps, the labor camps, ran back to their cities, to their communities, and they would say, "Run, Läuf Yid, men brennt uns. They're burning us alive, run." My grandfather, being one of them, said, "Shah, what are you rocking the boat for? It's another pogrom. We've survived other pogroms. We'll survive this one too. Shah. God will provide. God will protect." And here this is happening in Stanislav. And he realizes he was wrong. How he got back to his home in Nadvorna, I have no idea. But he did, and died shortly after. His wife, my grandmother, I have been told many times by my mother's brother's wife, I'll let it go if you don't mind. No, don't, because we'll have to start from the beginning. It's not going to last long. And I lost my thought. She was called by her sister in another community. "Friedele, my husband has typhus. I don't know what to do. Help me." So Frida came to her sister to nurse her husband, this sister's husband, back to health. And she did, which was amazing because there was a typhus epidemic. Terrible, terrible. She nursed the man back to health, but caught his typhus and died. Because there was such a horrible epidemic of bodies upon bodies, my mother saw this huge wheelbarrow go from house to house and the bodies thrown one on top of the other. And this woman was a tzedekah, a true tzedekah. And this is what my mother sees. She sees her father dying from half her face. She's a mother just being thrown. Okay. So now we go back to Poland. Both are gone now, mother and father. My mother must have absorbed, I can just pick it up and tell them, don't, please don't. Okay. I'm going to take a break video so I can tell somebody that now.
Okay.
Hello? Oh, excuse me. Hello? Please call back. I cannot speak to you now. Oh, call back in an hour. I have no idea.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay. I think my mother must have absorbed her father's workers because he had all kinds of businesses. She was taking care of 30 people. And so this woman, one of the women that works for her, Pani Bressler, Mrs. Bressler, why are you still here? Don't you know the Gestapo's the next town and they'll come here next? And my mother says, foolish lady, where do you expect me to go? My ID card says Jew. I don't have a card like you. Oh, well, if that's your only problem, you can have my card. Well, I want to take my sister with me. Okay, so you'll have my sister's card too. What's the price for these 2 cards? My mother's house, everything in it, and the land surrounding it, quite a few acres. And they ran with their clothes on their back. Somehow they got separated. They ran to the forest. hoping the partisans would guide them where can they go to safety. And there the sisters were separated. My mother that night, Gestapo soldiers on horses came, rounded up all the Jews they could find, and collected all their ID cards. My mother, when she got those 2 cards from this woman and her sister, they took off their pictures and put their own pictures on, and so my mother became Anna Chopta and the sister. So that all the cards were collected when the people that the Gestapo rounded up in the forest, while they put them in jail, they checked the cards. The next morning, only one young girl was hung, and the Gestapo said, "This is what we do to Jews." And as they were taking her to hang, she kept saying, "I am not a Jew. I'm a Christian. I am not a Jew." And indeed, she was not a Jew. Why did they hang her? She had black hair. All Jews have black hair. So mother was separated from her sister. She learned a lesson, black hair, it's automatic you're a Jew. She started wearing a kerchief all the time, and she continued running without her sister. She wound up in Ansbach, Germany. She asked the person on the street, "Where do you get a job over here?" And the person said, "There's only one place hiring, and that's called Hotel Stern." Stern, Jewish name. So my mother figured, oh, it's a Jewish place, she'll go there. And indeed, Hotel Stern gave her 2 jobs. Christian papers, handkerchief wearing, 2 jobs. She must feel safe. After working there for a week, she realized who the occupants were of this hotel. The elite Gestapo officers. So now my mother is in constant fright, and she's petrified to fall asleep at night. What if she says something in Jewish? And after working there for a year, all the workers that did not know how to read, which were most, and of course came from different countries. You know, if you're in Europe, you get in a car and you can drive to all these different countries. They came to my mother to read their letter that they got from home, and she did. So after a year, the workers would whisper to my mother, "You're a Jew, aren't you?" And my mother would say, "Why would you call me such a terrible name?" And they said, "All of us here, we come from different countries. We come to you to read the letters. Only a Jew is that smart." And now she has an added fear. If one of them will go to the Gestapo and tell them, "Anna Chopta is a Jew." Not one. None of them went to the Gestapo officers over there and said, "That woman is a Jew." And that's where my mother stayed until 1945, when the Americans came to liberate Ansbach. I will leave here. Let's go back to me. My earliest memory of living in Dębszczyzna was that as soon as I would go outside, I would get severe beatings by the neighborhood children. Now, my earliest memory is at the age of 3. Severe beatings. And I would be called Żydówka, which means Jew. I couldn't understand why they called me Żydówka, because when we went to church every Sunday, we heard from the priest every Sunday the exact same speech. "Brothers and sisters, how fortunate we are to have a savior amongst us called Hitler, who's getting rid of the vermin, the Jews." So that's what I hear about Jews, vermin. So why are they calling me Żydówka, a Jew, a vermin? I couldn't understand that. Couldn't understand. There weren't any other Jews. What are they talking about? So this went on every time I went outside. And the worst of the beating were two boys. And they egged on the others to do the beating. By the time I'm 4, the doctor, my mom, this was my mom and dad, right? I didn't know any other way. I was their daughter. I didn't understand. By the time I was 4, my mom took me to the doctor, and he said, Mrs. Klimek, you better keep your daughter indoors. I don't think she can survive another beating. So I stayed indoors most of the time. And my parents, my mom and dad, they went out to the field where they had a small plot of land where they grew vegetables. And every Thursday on market day, they would take what vegetables were available, sell them, and that's how we lived. What did we eat? Potato peels, rats. Those were the typical diets. Now, one of those days, it was a weekday, I was in the house, they were out in the field, and everything started shaking in the house. Everything started shaking. Terrible, terrible shaking. I got scared. I didn't know what it was. So I ran out of the house and climbed up. We had 2 cherry trees outside of our house. I climbed up one of those cherry trees, and because it was in full bloom, I was only 4 years old, the leaves completely hid me. You didn't know there was anybody up there. We had one road in this village, and I could see what was going on. There, I see the villagers running. And it was the first time in my 4 years that I saw such fright on the faces. Petrified. I couldn't understand why. And on this one road, there was a convoy of 6 trucks coming up. That's why everything was shaking in the house, because of those trucks. They come up, stop. Out of the first truck come out 2 soldiers, Gestapo. Apparently what they used to do is, anytime they needed to replenish their stock, they would go to the nearest community, take what they need. Anybody got in the way was no problem, just machine gun them down and leave. Next door to us, where we lived, was a young mother of 18. She had given birth to her baby 2 months before. She's clutching her baby like this, not looking down the road that there's anybody there. She decided maybe across the road it would be safer. So she started running across the road, not looking down. But those 2 soldiers that were coming up the road did see her. So they machine gunned her down. And I'm watching this. And they both come up to her. They both kick her to make sure that she's dead. They kicked her so hard that she rolled off her baby. The baby didn't get any of the bullets. Mama got all the bullets. And when she rolled off the baby could start breathing because Mama was on top of her. And it started crying. Both soldiers looked at each other. They both smiled because they had the same thought. They both bent down. One picked up one leg, the other one picked up the other leg and went this way.
And you saw this?
And I go like this, yes. And like this, I say, never show fear. Never show anything that can show that you're weak. Never cry. Those were the lessons that I learned. They continued. The other soldiers came out. Machine guns were going. You already saw blood on the one road. By late afternoon, they left because they had what they needed. My parents came back. I took him to where Mama was, the body. Oh, when they left, I should add that. When they left, the last truck you couldn't see anymore, I climbed down, went to that baby, picked up, took it to the back of its house, and dug a hole big enough for the baby. Close it up. When my parents came back, I took him and showed him where Mama was. He picked her up. I took him, he carrying her, to the back of the house. I showed him where that little hole was. He dug a proper grave, put the baby on top of her, covered, and life went on. That is the scene that I've had from the age of 4
What a nightmare.
until September 5th, no, the month of September 2007. Every single night I went to bed and I relived that. Before we made Aliyah, I went to a sleep clinic. I went to all our doctors where we lived. I wanted to see what kind of doctors I had to pursue when we came to Israel. One of the places I went to a sleep clinic because I would wake up every single morning from the age of 4 until the age of coming to Israel. I was 68 when I came to Israel. I would relive that and I would wake up exhausted. So I decided to go to a sleep clinic to find out what's wrong. And what they told me when they came in 6 o'clock in the morning the next morning, you never fell asleep. Just the surface. You never went into a deep sleep. Because the nightmares would keep me subconsciously awake. And that's why I would wake up exhausted every morning. I never.
All these years?
Yes. We came here, Aliyah. The first place we went was Yad Vashem. Lo and behold, I saw a new pavilion. The children's pavilion. Are you familiar with that?
Very much.
And what do they do there? They read 1.5 million names of each child that was slaughtered.
It's continuous.
That's right. It takes them 2.5 years to do it. So instead of being here every night, it's now back here in a box, and I've got the key.
Wow.
Why? Because now each child is recognized. It was here. It was a human being. I've done hospice work for 30 years. I've worked with people that were dying. And every agency that I ever did hospice for as a volunteer, my job was to work with the patient and their families. And if you're interested, I can tell you some cases. But I told every agency I ever came to, never give me a child. That's my only weakness. I cannot deal when a child is hurting. I cannot deal with it. That's my result from that. Okay. Now let's fast forward to the age of 5. Every single Sunday we would come back from church.
Just can I just, at this moment, you didn't know that these weren't your real parents.
That's right. And I will tell you in a moment how I found out. We would go to church, the same speech.
Even after this incident, they still felt that Hitler was their savior, even after they'd killed fellow Poles.
Oh, wait a minute. We were told in church that Hitler loved children. Not once were we told in the camps when the soldiers needed to practice their shooting, they would throw up babies as their target, and live babies. and that's what they would shoot. Not once were we told that live children were taken and their skins taken off to make lampshades. Not once. So I'm told in church, Hitler loves children. He's a savior. And Jews are vermin. So we come back from church. I should describe to you the palace that we lived in. Stone house, stone walls, stone floor, one room. One room, one window. In the middle of the room is a table. Yes. Please come back another time.
I'm the nurse.
David is downstairs. I cannot help you. He's not here.
What is he?
Go look for him in the lobby or someplace else. I am in the middle of a meeting. Please excuse me. I apologize, but
Not at all.
as you walk in the front door, that one door, there's a great big hole. That's the stove, where a pot is hanging, and underneath is wood where you cook. That's how you cook. And every single Sunday, remember those two boys that did the worst of their beating? It's their mother that used to visit us every single Sunday after lunch. She would have a nice conversation. I'm 5 years old now. Nice conversation with my mother. And before she would leave, she would always pick something up that belonged to my mom. Mrs. Klimek, how lovely. Can I borrow this? I see this since the age of 3. So finally, at the age of 5, I go over to her and I say, in this tone, you know, you come here every single Sunday. You pick something up that belongs to my mother and you say, can I borrow it? You've never brought anything back. That's called taking. That's not borrowing. That was a Sunday. The following Sunday, I'm sitting on that, it was a windowsill, wide windowsill, the window. I'm sitting there eating cold milk and noodles. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast, but I was eating cold milk and noodles. And my mom was about to put something in to the stove. I happened to look up and I start counting, 1, 2, 3, and I got up to 30. And I said to my mom, oh, look, Mommy, they're coming to shoot me. These were soldiers. To this day, my next birthday, I'll be 80. To this day, I can't figure out why I said that. But sure enough, they came to us. They see my mom, they see me, and one soldier who must have been the leader said, I have to go to the wall at the other end of the room. To the wall. And as I'm walking slowly to the wall, I hear him say to my mom, we have it in good authority that this is a Jew. Why did they think I was a Jew? What good authority was it? The woman that came last Sunday, because I opened my mouth to her, went to Lublin, the Gestapo headquarters, and said, I come from Demszczyzna. There's a family by the name of Klimek that is hiding a Jewish child. That was their good authority. So they sent 30 soldiers to shoot a 5-year-old. That's how I find out I'm a Jew. We have it on good authority that this is a Jew. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's why they called me Żydówka when they beat me. But wait a minute. We were told in the church that Jews are vermin. I'm not vermin. I'm a nice person. So that means they lied. The church lied. I'm sorry. Don't stop it. Please don't. I cannot go from the beginning.
I know.
On video.
It's the last Glassman.
So please, come
I'm
back.
sorry. I just wanted to know if you know about the blood test.
No, you'll have to come back. I'm sorry.
Les,
Please, come back.
I'm Lily.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I am sorry.
Not to worry. Wow, this is just unbelievable.
To those of you that are watching this video, I apologize for the interruption.
Not at all.
This is Grand Central Station by not by choice. Anyway, so I'm thinking to myself, first, the church lied to me. Now I understand why the children beat me, because I was a Żydówka. Meanwhile, my mom is pleading with him, this is not a Jew. We've been helping you kill the Jews. Would I risk my life for a Jew? And every time she says Jew, she spits on the ground. She said, this is my daughter.
They didn't have other children.
We'll get to that. And if I should forget, you'll remind me. So I have a conversation with your and my best friend. Dear God, please give me the words to get out of this. And I give you my promise. If you let me grow up, if you let me get married, if you let me have children, I promise you, I'll give you back Zhidden.
Wow.
I hear already, ready, aim. And the idea was when I turn around, and I turned around and I see one hand up, he was going to say fire. Meanwhile, my mom sees that she's not getting anywhere with him, comes to the wall, picks me up, and she said, well, then in that case, you'll have to shoot us both. She knows I'm a Jew. Remember?
Sure.
My father told her. So instead of saying fire, he says, halt, stop. Why? It's 1945. The American allies are coming in. They're closing down the camps. He would have to send the couple, my mom and dad, to a concentration camp, and then send me to a camp. What camps? They're closing down. Where are they going to send me? Meanwhile, the American soldiers are taking prisoners of war. You know what? Not worth it. So he says to my mom, all right, I'm going to go back to Lublin and I'm going to check the records in the church, who she really is. And they left. So I remembered. I thought they left. They never came back. So they couldn't have possibly gone to the church. My thinking. They couldn't have gone to the church to check, because if he would have gone back to the church in Lublin, he would have found out I was a Jew. Because the day she got me, Carolina got me, she went to Lublin to the church, put my real name, Clara Bressler, on the Jews list, because the church kept records of the Jews that were slaughtered, so they wouldn't have to give out any ration cards. And she put Vanja Klimek on the church list. Her daughter, Vanja Klimek. That was my name. That's what they called me, Vanja Klimek. So obviously, in my mind, they never went back to the church, because they never came back. Okay. That's where it ends as far as those episodes were concerned. Weeks later, the war officially finished. My mother was in the hotel all those years, working.
Yeah.
When the Americans came in, My mother went to the head of this army unit and said, I can help you. People are going to come here, they'll want papers to go back to their own country. I have fluency in 7 languages. I'll help you. And she did. She processed all the people that came. At the end of all the people coming, she goes to this gentleman, the head of this unit. I helped you up to now? He said, lady, I couldn't do it without you. Good. Now it's your turn to help me. Name it. I want to go back to Poland to see if anyone survived. So he says, listen, lady, the war may be officially over, but not for you people. They're still slaughtering you. It's not safe. So she says, sir, I'm going with your help or without your help. Okay, I'll give you 1 soldier to go back to Poland to check. So this 1 soldier and she go back to Nadvona. She finds no one. She told me that there wasn't a soul that she found from my father's side. From her side, no one. She did find her sister that got separated when they went to the forest. She did find her, got her to work in the hotel as well, so that was it. But between my mother's and father's families, my mother told me there were over 250 people. She and her sister survived. She did have a brother that came to America in 1933, but she didn't have his address, was lost. So then she decided, at least let her find out where her daughter's buried. She had this name and address that her husband gave her. So she said to the soldier, okay, now we're going to Demchizna. He said, lady, you want to commit suicide, you'll do it in your time. I'm not going back with you because it's not safe. So either you come back with me or you're on your own. So my mother said, okay, I'm on my own. Goodbye. She went to Demchizna. She found the house where I was, this address. Knocked on the door. You'll only get 1 guess of who opened the door. She immediately recognized me.
Sure.
So what I see is a grown lady there, white as this. I said, lady, you're not feeling well? Come in, sit down. What's the matter? I give her something to drink. What's your name? I gave her something to eat. And after she finished eating, she said to her, what's your name? I said, Vanja Klimek. Oh. And Vanja, you remember Yossel? Hirsch? Frida? My grandparents' name, my father's name. What do I know about Jewish names? I know church. I know Christian. I know how to pray in the Christian prayers. What do I know about Jewish names? I said, lady, you're obviously not feeling well. Take a rest, take it easy. When my parents will come back, they'll help you. They come back, they walk in. I did not hear Carolina say, but my mother told me years later, that as soon as they walked in, Carolina said, oh my God, Vanja's mother.
Wow. You never
Instinct. Didn't know. Instinct. My mother goes over to her. She said, yes, you're right. I'm Vanja's mother. I've come to take my daughter. And Carolina said, no. But my husband said, only 1 condition. If anybody survives, you'll have to give her back. Of course I will, when her father comes. That's the only one I know. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. So my mother had to go to the Polish court system. And the Polish court system decreed the child had to go with the real mother plus $500 American. Where did my mother get $500 American? Do you know? As soon as the war ended, Jewish organizations sprang up all over buying back Jewish children. That's how she got $500. Are you familiar with the story of a man going to a convent? Are you familiar with that story?
They say Rab Herzog did.
Several.
A lot of Rabbanim did.
And when they when they asked the nuns, "Do you have any Jews?" No, we don't have any Jews.
Say Shema Yisrael.
Oh, exactly. They were buying back Jewish children. So now, the court said I had to go with this lady. Carolina and Stanislav Klimek say to me, "Vanju, this lady came to take you on a vacation." "What's a vacation?" "Oh, you'll have a good time." "And when do I come back home?" 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you'll come back home." "Okay, well, for 2 weeks, fine, I'll go on a vacation." I have a picture of me at the train station. And when we're at the train station, my mother sees in far distance soldiers, picks me up, and we go under the wheels of the train, under the tracks, under the train. And when the soldier boots walk by, far that way, we come out. Takes me, we get in on the train. She goes into one of those booths where you have the door that close. She hears voices, somebody's coming, picks me up, and stuffs me in the luggage compartment on top. Afraid. Voices from a distance, takes me out. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what a vacation is? I don't think I like it. We get to Ansbach at the hotel. She continued staying at the hotel, working. She works all day. So I roamed the streets of Ansbach. One of the streets that I roam, I hear very strange singing. I've never heard those words. I go in and I see a bunch of old men, all of them wearing the same kind of cloth with stripes on it. And they have something on their head. One of the old men sees me and asks me, "Who are you?" And so I tell him, "I'm Vanja Klimek, and I'm here on vacation." And I see on this funny looking, what today is called a stender, I didn't know what it was, and I saw a book open there. Strange, wiggly things. Didn't know what. My first introduction to Yiddish, to Jewish men and Yiddish, and they were reading from a sefer. I went there every single day. That's how I learned Yiddish. Now I'm in Germany. I'm going to German school in the lager, in the DP camp.
But did your mother at this time, she didn't say that I'm your mother?
I'm learning Yiddish. I'm learning German. 2 weeks now are up. Thank you for this vacation. Okay, it's time to go home. My mother picks me up on the chair. "You're never going back there because I'm your mother." Within weeks of hearing that, I became deathly ill, and mother took me to the doctor, and he said, "Frau Bressler, I'm sorry to have to tell you, your daughter has at the most 6 months."
Oy.
There was no food, proper food to eat. There was no this, that, and the other. So I developed spots on my lungs. And the diagnosis was that I was going to die within 6 months. So what's the nace? We're in a hotel where there's real butter, real eggs, real milk. Obviously, I survived. But the woman that reclaimed me, that called herself mother, was a broken woman. She was under the Gestapo, they not knowing that she was a Jew, living in fear every single day because the workers realized she was Jewish. So the woman that reclaimed me, which I didn't find out until I was in America years later, was diagnosed between 60 to 80% emotionally damaged. So the woman that reclaimed me, you're gonna die. It's about time. You should be dead. My husband should be living. You should be dead. So, the neighborhood children beat me. Firing squad wanted me dead. My mother, real mother, tells me I should be dead. I go to school and I'm again beaten. There was a little girl by the name of Gloria, a little Italian girl. And my mother's beatings went on until I was 13 years old. Gave the order, because when I came to America, we came in February 11th. I didn't know any English. They put me in 3rd grade in February. I was just a stone sitting there. I didn't know what was going on. But by the time September came, I was fluent in English. And then I understood what was going on from the 4th grade on. So I never had 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade. And because I had a heavy accent, who do you pick on? So one little Italian girl by the name of Gloria said, "You beat up Claire." These boys are beating me, and I ask them, "What the heck are you doing? I don't even know you." Gloria said,
Wow.
"Gloria told you to beat me?" "Yeah." "Where does Gloria live?" Told me. So one fine evening, I went to Gloria's building, hid behind the stairwell, and waited for Gloria to come home. When she opens the front door of the building, there is Gloria. I come out of the stairwell. "Gloria, recognize me?" "Yeah." "I understand you gave the order to beat me." "So? You talk funny." So I had a heavy accent. "Well, Gloria, I think it's only fair that you get the same medicine that you inflicted on me." So I beat that little girl up, got her to the ground, and I said to her, "If I ever get touched again by anyone, I promise you, next time you won't get up from this floor." That's a promise. I was never touched again. But that made me realize, at the age of 13, I didn't have to take my mother's beatings anymore.
Why would your mother beat you?
Because she was a sick lady. She was sick. She had all that in the war. Her father dying the way he did. Her mother dying the way she did. Being in this hotel, and Hitler was a frequent visitor.
Hitler came to the hotel?
Oh yes, these elite Gestapo officers. She felt guilty. She didn't kill Hitler. Professional soldiers tried to kill him and they couldn't. And I tried to explain it to her all those years. It wouldn't go in. So what do you take it out on? The thing that's nearest to you. When I was a child, I tried to commit suicide 4 times. I couldn't take it anymore. I came to America. I was diagnosed right away with ulcers. All kinds of hilarious. You know what a hilarious is?
Sure.
I mean, is it a wonder? You know what I went through from the time I was born until... It's no wonder. It's no wonder.
Hi, can I just ask, when your mother said, I'm your mother and you're not going back, what was your feeling?
Devastated. I'm never going to see Caroline and Stanislav Klimek because to me they were my parents. Those two Christian Polacks loved me like no parent could. They loved me, protected me. She was even willing to stand in front of the firing squad.
And they didn't do it for money. They got no money for
No, not as far as I know. Although Yad Vashem refused to accept them as righteous Gentiles. And I found out later, they never told me this, but I found out through other source that they assumed that she must have gotten money, that they must have gotten money.
But they didn't.
They've not as, don't ask me, I'm assuming not.
Yeah.
But she was willing to face
She was prepared to die.
Died. Doesn't that make them righteous Gentiles?
The most righteous Gentiles.
How could the Yad Vashem of all places tell me no? That's why I never gave to Yad Vashem. I won't. They could do that to those kind of people? No. But I've got that taken care of too. So.
And did they have other children?
My mother told me, I asked her, why was I called Vanja Klimek? Because my mother said to me that they had a daughter that was called Vanja Klimek, and she died, that my father came, he was wheeling me on a back road. It wasn't safe. This is all my mother's that telling me. It wasn't safe to walk on the main road because the Gestapo would be. So he was wheeling me in a carriage on a back road, and there was only one person on that road coming towards him. He was desperate by that time, my mother tells me, because no one was willing to take me. So he stops this lady and he said, "Excuse me, would you like to have a child?" So my mother says, she looked at me, and I looked just like her daughter, my age. So she said, yes, of course, I would be thrilled to have this child. Well, then you have to know that I'm a Jew, this is my daughter, and that's the condition. And she took me, went back to Damshtizna, and he went back to my mother, and blah, blah. That's what my mother told me. So, this is what my mother told me. I have these memories, what I think happened, but apparently what's common for survivors, as they age, they start doubting their memories. It couldn't have possibly happened. I couldn't have possibly seen a child torn in half. I couldn't have possibly faced a firing squad. I couldn't have possibly seen people machine gunned down. No, I'm wrong. I can't possibly. This could not have happened. Well, I want it verified. Nothing. Then I came up with a brilliant thought. I know what? I'm going to find a first-rate here in Israel. I was living in this place already. I'm going to find a first-rate hypnotist. He'll take me back. Are you familiar with the name Dr. Brian Weiss?
I've heard the name, yeah.
That's who I wanted to meet. But he's in Florida, I'm in Israel. So I started researching, and I found out who the #1 hypnotist was who lives in Yerushalayim. I call him up. Sir, my name is, this is my story. I want to hire you. And he said, I would be delighted to take you on. There's just one problem. My practice is in Tel Aviv. Sir, I'm not going to schlep to Tel Aviv every week. Who lives in Yerushalayim that has your kind of reputation? Well, there is a man here. I taught him. Okay, what's his name? Gives me the name. I call the man up. This is my story. Would you be willing? I would be thrilled. Come on over. I come over. I ask him, how many years have you done this? Oh, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never had a failure. I smiled at him and I said, sir, there's a first time for everyone. Oh, 6 times I went to him. Not once could he hypnotize me. I knew that. I know this. It's a steel. Nothing can get through unless I let it through.
You couldn't be hypnotized.
He couldn't hypnotize me. He said, I've never had anything like this. 6 times. There goes my verification. My son calls me up, my son who's a tour guide, a licensed tour guide in Israel, but also in Poland. So when he was in Poland going to classes to be a Polish tour guide, he met different organizations, different individuals. One of the individuals which he befriended, first name is Emil. Emil works for an organization called I'm a blank. He works for an organization where they research the Jews of their communities.
Okay.
And then they put on plays for the Polish to see what contributions the Jews gave. So my son found his grandfather's cemetery, which was overgrown, not one stone there, not one. He found it, dealt with different organizations, foundations. He, out of his own pocket, many shekels, zlotys, hired workers there to put a concrete fence around the front, and one of the foundations was going to have a dedication ceremony. The Greek Orthodox was invited, the Christian priest was invited, and a rabbi. And he also spoke to this individual, Emil, with more research, and because they were friends now, Emil being a Christian. By the way, Emil, did I ever tell you my mother was born in Poland? No, really? Where? Yeah, she was a hidden child during the war. Really? Where? I'll have to ask my mother. You do that. So I have from the Red Cross all the information about the clinics. I faxed it to my son, Dębczyzna, Poland, the name. He faxed it to Emil. Emil says, I know Dębczyzna, I know it very well. I'll go over there and find out if there's anyone still alive that knew the clinics. He gets there, speaks to the city council. They don't call them mayor, it's a city council. Is there anyone here? Yes, a first cousin to Carolina Klimek. Emil goes to the first cousin and says, you remember your cousin Carolina? Of course, because I used to play with the little girl, Vanja Klimek, all the time. Wow. Yossi calls me up and he says, Mom, all Emil found was a first cousin, but she just remembered a little girl by the name of Vanja Klimek. I had to sit down. I was shaking so bad. I said, Yossi, that was my name. I go to my husband. This was before he became totally blind. How would you feel if one of my grandsons moved in here for 2 weeks and stayed with you? Why? Because my son found... Sure. Okay. Within an hour, I called my son. Guess what, Yossi? I'm going with you. My son, being a tour guide, put together a whole itinerary of where we're going. First place we're going to go is Majdanek, because I want my son to say Kaddish for his grandfather. That was the morning. That afternoon, we went to Dębczyzna, and we met the cousin. First in Majdanek. They wanted to video my story, which both my son and I sitting there, and I'm telling my story, which I have the video on the computer. And then they wanted to show us more. I said, no, I want you to tell me where we can go, because I want my son to say Kaddish for his grandfather. And where do they tell us to go? Where the ashes are. My son found out that my father was arrested. September 1st was the war. My father was arrested the 18th or the 19th of September, put into a labor camp. I have the information about the labor camp. Then he was switched to another labor camp. I have that information. In 1941, my father escaped the labor camp, and he ran to the forest to join the partisans. And that's when he met Paterik. And you know that story.
Yeah.
And in 1943, those in the forest were rounded up, put into a ghetto. From the ghetto, they were marched to Majdanek. And on November 3rd, 1943, they were shot and burned. And my father's ashes are in that mound. And I'm standing there. I need a minyan for my son to say Kaddish. But I'm a lady of miracles, aren't I?
Unbelievable.
No one is there. I want my son to say Kaddish. I say to myself, Ribono Shel Olam, I want my son to say Kaddish. From the distance are coming a whole group of people. Lo and behold, the closer they come, I'm hearing all of them speak Hebrew. They all work for the aviation department, and once a year they go to Majdanek to say Kaddish for all the Yiddish neshamas. They come. Who are you? My father's here. I want my son to say Kaddish. So the woman that was a leader of this group, she turns to the group. He is saying Kaddish, and you will join him. And they invite me to stand up there. I said, no. You, all of you that are going to say Kaddish, you say Kaddish. I'm standing down with the rest of the people, and they are unfurling Israeli flags. And they give me a flag to hold. I'm holding an Israeli flag while my son is leading the Kaddish.
It's like an ace. No question. It's min hashamayim, no question.
Then that afternoon, we went to the Mshizna, and I meet the cousin. Emil told them, please don't prepare anything. They are kosher. So my son, in his great wisdom, bought an awesome cake that we brought with us. We also bought a cross made in Beit Lechem. We gave them the cross, and she had a feast. Emil, God bless him, so they shouldn't be offended, ate for all of us. It looked delicious. Obviously, this woman knew how to bake. You could tell. Meanwhile, I said, I'm so sorry. We can't. We keep kosher. She had no idea what kosher was. But we opened up the package, and she and her son ate with us the cake. So then Emil came because he was going to be the translator. And so I started asking my questions. There were children here, and they beat me up terribly. She knew about it. And they called me Zhiduvka. Why? There were no other Jews here. That's not correct. This village hid 4 Jews.
Wow.
I didn't know that. That's why the children called me Zhiduvka. Where I lived, there were 2 cherry trees. They were called Vanjas trees. That's true. All of the memories that I started doubting, I'm asking these questions. And when I was 4, Gestapo came here. That's correct. And did you know what happened? What happened to me? Yes. But the adults spoke about them amongst themselves. They didn't want us children to know. It was a horrible thing. So the children didn't know. So everything that the baby being torn, but all that was true. And the Klimiks had a daughter. Her name was Vanja Klimik. No, they never had any children. But I was called Vanja Klimik. Vanja. When you call somebody a sweetheart, a dear, what do you call in Hebrew?
Motek.
Vanja was to them a motek. That's why I was called Vanja Klimik. You see how different my mother's story was to what the truth was? My mother also said that my father's bunker was infiltrated by Gestapo. He threw in the bomb, and that's how my father was killed. So anything and everything my mother said. But now I'm finding out the emes. Okay, last question. When I was 5, a firing squad came. That's true. And then they left. Remember, they left because they never came back. No, that's not true. What are you talking about? They never came back. Because when they wanted to leave, they were attacked by the Russian partisans. Christian Russians. Attacked and must have killed them. That's why they never came back. Now I know the emes. I have been asked to write my story for years. And I said the world doesn't need another Holocaust story. Enough already. But with what happened now in 2017, I will write my story. And I already have the title. It's going to be called Choices. People ask me, I don't understand how you are. I just don't understand you. My mother was bitter to her dying day. I would come with my head covered. Why are you wearing this schmatte? Don't you know the Germans are going to find you and finish the job? Why are you wearing this? She never left Hitler. And so what I learned very early on in life, you have choices. And people ask me, how can you be the way you are? So I said, what did my enemy want of me? They wanted you dead. So what's my best revenge? You live? Bingo! You have a choice. Life is filled, every waking moment that you have, you are filled with choices. My mother was who she was. She taught me a tremendous amount. And I used to tell my sons, I gave birth to 3 sons. And I used to tell them from they were very early on, you are going to meet a tremendous amount of people in your life. Some are going to be good, and some are going to be bad. The good ones, you learn what to do. The bad ones, you learn what not to do. From my mother, I learned what not to do. That was the choice that I had. I could have become bitter like her. Who would it have helped? Me? The people that I would meet? My mother? No. I had to be the opposite. When my mother was diagnosed at the age of 92, that she was dying, I lived in Rochester, New York. She lived in Brooklyn, New York. And I would go back every 3-4 weeks to take care of both of them. I would dance with her. I would sing with her. I would hug her. I would kiss her. One fine night, after taking care of her, bathing her, medications, feeding, I would sit in her living room and think of the 15 years that I lived with her. I never had a birthday party.
Why?
My mother never once told me I love you.
Not once.
When she was dying, that's when she said, I love you. Not I love you with a hug. First time that my mother let me hug her is when she knew she was dying. Huh? I was, how old? 60 years old for the first time I could hug my mother. One fine morning, early in the morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, peeks around. Claire, can I come and sit down? In America, I was called Claire. That's not my name, by the way. How did I get Claire? My name's Clara. The first day my mother took me to public school, the teacher asked, what's her name? Claire Bressler. No, we'll call her Claire. You know why? Do you remember? Or maybe you're too young, maybe. Howdy Doody and Clarabelle the Clown? See, you're too young, I told you. That was a television show. Howdy Doody, who was a puppet, and his best friend was Clarabelle the Clown. And so the teacher said, her name's going to be Clara, they're going to all make fun of her and call her Clarabelle the... No, the kids beat me instead. They had a better idea. Anyway, I was Claire. So, where did I finish? I'm losing my thought. So my mother peeks around the corner. Claire, can I come and sit with you? Mom, it's your home, please. She sits down, looks me in the face. I don't understand you. What is wrong with you? Mom, what's wrong with me? Every time you come here, you hug me, you kiss me, you love me, you dance with me, you tell me how much you love me. How can you treat me the way you treat me? What's wrong with the way I treat you? Claire, if anyone would have done to me what I did to you, I would have killed them a long time ago.
Wow.
When I hear that, I say, thank you, God, you opened the door for me. My mother was afraid of two things. She was afraid of pain, which I was able to take care of through hospice. I worked with the hospice in New York. She never had any pain. And she was afraid of death. Not she was afraid of death, she was afraid of dying because then what would God do to her because of what she did to me?
Wow.
Her brother didn't talk to her for 4 years when he found out what she did to me. And I'm saying to God, thank you, thank you, thank you. I said, Mom, let me explain something to you. First of all, God can't punish you. Why not? Because I forgave you years ago. And because I forgave you, he can't do anything bad to you. You sure? He can't do anything to me? Mom, when have I ever lied to you? Never. Okay. And besides that, guess who's going to meet you when you go home? Tell me the 3 people that you loved the most. Your father, my mother, and her father, in that order. That's who's going to be at the gate welcoming you. My father, your mother, and her husband, your father. Those are going to say, Shalom Aleichem and welcome. No more fear of death. I got rid of the fear of death and I got no pain because I worked with the hospice nurse, given all the experience that I had. They knew what they had to do.
Hi, can I just ask?
Yeah.
Because I think it's unbelievable. When your mother said, you're not going back, I'm your mother, was there any compassion? Did she hug you? Did you feel any...
My mother beat me terribly. When we moved to Stuttgart from Ansbach, my mother rented a room in a private home.
In Stuttgart?
In Stuttgart. And we went to the lager every day. That's where she went to art to learn how to professionally sew. And that's where I went to the Hebrew school. And the owner of this home walked in to the room where we were, and he saw my mother's foot on my throat.
Oh no.
And if he would not have walked in, I would not be alive today.
Are you being serious?
I'm serious. You gotta understand, this was a very sick woman. I didn't understand that when I was a child. That's why I tried to commit suicide 4 times, which she called my aunt, her brother's wife. She would rush over, Claire, she would say constantly, Claire, you have to have hope. You see this?
Yeah.
You have to have hope, Claire. There's a tomorrow. This is what I have. Hope. Stares at me every day. You have to have hope. There is a tomorrow.
Did you ever feel you wanted to go back to your Polish,
Yes.
like the parents?
Yes. I wrote to them. My mother and I send them care packages. When I grew up and got married, I send them care packages. I send them money. And I found out on this trip that money saved her because she got pneumonia. And it was the money that I sent.
This is unbelievable.
There was that money that she saved her. She was able to pay her bills from the hospital.
And you had a close connection with the family?
And we wrote.
And she wrote back?
And so, not only did she write, but then that last letter that she wrote, it was blotched, so I could tell that she was crying as she wrote it. What did she write on that letter? Vanju, in Polish, Dear Vanju, don't write to me anymore. Why? You remember the 2 boys that did the worst of the beatings? And the mother turned you into the Gestapo? Those 2 boys are now grown just like you are. And they promised they will find you and finish the job that the Gestapo didn't, that the firing squad didn't. So I'm worried that if they find your letter, they'll be able to find you. So don't write to me anymore. That's how much love there was. Was willing to stand with me on the wall when I'm 5, and was willing to give up writing. Never told her sister not to jeopardize me. Those were parents. And that's what sustained me to this present day.
Wow.
That's who I owe my sanity to. And that's who I owe my grandmother that I never knew, who was a giver. A giver, a giver, a giver. My aunt always said, you're nothing like your mother. You're like your father and your grandmother. Because I'm a giver. I've been a giver my entire life. I was my mother's caretaker from the age of 5. I have never stopped being a caretaker up to this very minute. I've been a caretaker my whole life. That's why I did hospice.
Did you ever have a dream to go back and see them? When you got, before, in all the years that you were writing?
But I had those 2 boys. The minute if I'll show you a picture of me at the age of 5, you would still know it's me. With this face, even though I'm now almost 80. And I was afraid. I had 3 boys. I was afraid that they would find and they would kill my children. Me, you can only die once. But I have 3 sons.
And these were Polish? These are Polish?
Yes.
Jews?
Yes.
What happened to the other 3 Jews at the village?
I have no idea. I was told by this cousin that we met in 2017. There was a mother and a daughter. 2. There was me, and there was another. They when they went back, I was told by this cousin, they went back to their communities and they were killed by the Poles.
That actually did happen?
Of course. And the house that my mother gave up to get those 2 ID cards, apparently the continuation of generations are still living in that house. Because I have 2 cousins that went back. I couldn't afford to join them. Went back and they saw the house and they talked to the people.
And growing up, your Polish parents, they weren't wealthy.
Not at all.
So, but they provided for you.
Yes.
And
I ate what they ate. The rats and the potato peels and whatever it was. Cold milk and noodles.
And did your Polish mother hug you? Did she show you love and
Constantly.
affection?
Constantly.
And when you were beaten up because they called you
Żydówka,
what did your Polish parents say?
they were afraid to make any waves, that the neighbors shouldn't do anything. As it was, I opened my mouth and one of the neighbors did. That woman, by the way, I asked this cousin, what happened to that woman? Oh, she had to leave. Which is telling me that the community said, out. That was my interpretation.
And that cousin, have you still had contact with?
No. I wrote to her a thank you letter, and I sent it to Emil to send to her. She gave me gifts. She crocheted napkins and all that she gave me. I cannot speak now. Please call back in an hour. Thank you. So.
And you were in contact with her after your meeting?
No, I wasn't. I haven't been. Emil, I told Emil, when you go back there, anytime if she needs anything, she should tell you and I'll help. That's it.
But I think meeting her must have been a very special...
It was... I'm not going insane. Because I felt I couldn't possibly remember all these things, and here this woman verified all my memories, which a hypnotist couldn't do after 6 sessions.
And how old is she?
4 months difference between she and I. 4 months.
Do you remember her as a little child?
Nothing. I do not remember her at all playing with her. Nothing. I don't remember that Russians came and attacked these Gestapo. I don't remember her. I remember the room where we were, the layout of the room, the table, the chairs, 2 cabinets, a bed for them, and a cot under the window for me.
Did you go back to the house?
We on the outside, yes. They changed, rebuild houses. The house that I was no longer standing. Instead, the new people rebuild, and it's got 3 windows. 3 windows. The people, we knocked on the door, nobody was home, but Emil and my son went to the backyard. I didn't go.
It must have been so emotional.
It was surreal. It was surreal. It's not happening. It was just, I had not been in Poland for 72 years.
It's the first time you went back?
Yes. I left in 1945 and went back there now in 2 years ago, 2017. But I needed to meet this woman because she remembered me. And she was the one that said, no, I'm not insane, because she verified all my memories. And I asked a Holocaust educator, because she had me speak to a lot of groups. I said, tell me something, am I going cuckoo? She says, no, my dear, a lot of the people, Shoah survivors, are going through what you're going through. They are doubting their memories. It can't possibly have happened. My mother befriended a lady that I knew as well when I was still a child. The woman had 3 children in Poland, and her community, the Gestapo came in. They went from house to house to house, and the machine guns were going. Hers was the last house on that row of houses. She had 3 children, and many times they took the children to the camps and what they did with them. She was not going to have that happen. She was going to die with her children. She choked each of the children, so they should not go through the machine gun. Hers was the only house they didn't go into. The woman came to America, remarried, and had 3 more children. How many survivors in this country, what they've given back to this country? What we know is, those of us that have decided to make choices, we know how to survive. I've had a very difficult life my entire life. My only blessing in life are my grandchildren. I told you I had 3 sons, which, by the way, January 18th, 2015, my youngest son, at the age of 49, died in a car crash. He was in a back seat, buckled, fast asleep. It was, you know what black ice is? That's what happened. Went like this. Everybody walked out, on both cars, walked out with scratches. He, not a scratch, not a bruise, was instantly killed. You know what that says to me? And then, during the entire week of Shiva, I joked with everybody. Nobody could understand, you know, I must be here. If my son would meet you, within a few minutes, you would be laughing so hard. Every time he'd pick me up from the airport, Newark airport, till his house, by the time I got to his house, my side was hurting. I was laughing so hard. That was my son. That's the inheritance he gave me. I joked the entire week. My grandchildren, he left 10 children behind. The youngest was 6. The next one was 8, a boy. 3 sons and 7 daughters. And I am watching that entire week of Shiva. My 3 grandsons, this 8-year-old saying Kaddish for his father. And so you'll ask anybody there. They won't, many of them don't know my name, but if you'll ask where does Smiley live, they'll know. Do I always feel like smiling? I don't. But when I leave this house, this apartment, I smile. And do you know how many people came over to me? Chaya, when I see your face, I feel better. I can go on for the rest of the day. That's my choice. I may not feel like it inside because of what I'm carrying, but does that mean somebody else has to carry it too? You have the power to make a difference in another human being's life. Use that power. Hospice patients, they started giving me patients that nobody else would touch. None of the volunteers would touch. One example, I'll give you maybe 3 examples. One example, hospice unit, there was a hospital there called St. Mary's. They took the entire 6th floor and made it out of a hospice unit. Hospice unit was, each patient's room was a bedroom with their furniture in it. There was a living room, a dining room. That's what they converted to this unit. And they had a patient there. We just made Havdalah, and I get a call from this hospice unit. Claire, we've got a patient. She's got maybe at the most 2.5 hours left. Unconscious, but there's a war going on and we don't know what to do for her. There's a war, a horrible war. Please, can you come and help? Please call back in an hour. Thank you.
Hi, you are very popular. Incredibly. No, but Chai, this is unbelievable.
So, continue the story. I asked, when they called me help, it's the husband that asked, please have somebody Jewish come to be with her. I asked, what is the denomination of this woman? She's a Reformed Jewess. Okay, I'll be there in a little while. I called the Reform rabbi, Rabbi Miller. We have a patient. You need to do your thing. She's at St. Mary's Hospital. I get to St. Mary's. He meets me downstairs in the lobby. Claire, don't even bother going up. You're not going to get anywhere. She's totally unconscious. I said, Rabbi, you did your thing? Good. Now it's my turn. I'm going to do my thing. I go upstairs. I ask to see the patient's chart. I want a history of this patient. She can't talk to me. She's on her way home. I read the chart. Now I understand why the war. It was that simple. Rabbeinu Shalom, it doesn't take rocket science. Just use your moichel. Use your brain. And it said in the chart, there was your answer. I go in. The first thing I do is I stroke her hand. I stroke her forehead. And I hum some Yiddish lullabies. She was burning when I walked in. The nurse came, she was burning. You could fry an egg on her forehead. She was burning. Within 1 hour, totally normal. Why? I said, sweetheart, I know you can hear me, and I want you to understand something. Unfortunately, not all of us know what understanding means, what compassion means, what forgiveness means. And unfortunately, you've been subjected to family members that have not known how to do that. And you're feeling worried and scared because they said Kaddish for her when she did what she did. I said, that's not the way it works with God. With God, we're all His children. And He loves every single one of us. And you should know it's your husband that asked for a Jewish person to come here to speak to you. That's how much He loves you. Don't worry. It's not what your family said. It's okay to go home. She died.
But she listened to you.
That's right. What did it show in the chart? She married a non-Jew. It's a non-Jew that asked for a Jew to speak to his wife.
Amazing.
But her family said Kaddish for her. I had another case. The son asked that I come to visit his father. He was taking care of his father, who was terminal, and in his home, the son's home. I come to the house. The father's in his bedroom. The son says to me in the living room, I want you to speak with my father, but under no conditions are you to tell my father that he's dying. You have to respect the wishes of the family, and there's confidentiality. Okay. I come into the room. This man was the purchasing agent for the American Navy. While he lived in America, he had absolutely no interest in religion whatsoever. He was totally non-affiliated and not interested. I walk in, the son introduces me. Dad, this is Claire. Son leaves, closes the door. The first question out of the father is, am I dying? I said, you tell me. Are you? Yes, of course I'm dying. So you're angry for a reason? Well, yes, I'm very upset. Because you're dying? Oh no, I'm ready. Then what are you angry for? Because my son and daughter haven't spoken to each other for 10 years.
Wow.
I'm going to leave. What's going to happen? There was my case. Now I knew what to do. So I spoke individually to the son. I spoke individually to the sister and said, I'm just curious. Do you love your father? Of course. Then why are you creating such havoc with his soul? What are you talking about? Apparently you, I tell to the son, haven't spoken to your sister for 10 years. I tell to the sister, you haven't spoken to your brother for 10 years. Why? Don't even remember why. But meanwhile, your father is afraid of what's going to happen after he goes home. What are you going to do about it? What should we do? How about getting together, visiting him, both of you, and hug each other in front of him?
Wow.
Which they did. 3 months later, I'm grocery shopping in a grocery store with my husband, and there's the son. He runs over to me, gives me such a hug. I cannot begin to tell you how grateful I am to you. Why? My father died in such peace. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
That's what I did as a hospice volunteer. I made it my job to find solutions so the person that was going home could go home in peace.
And it didn't make a difference, Jewish, not Jewish. That's immaterial.
I am my father's daughter. A human being is a human being.
Absolutely.
I don't look at what your label is, and I wish we Jews would stop making such differences between each other.
That's so true.
You know, when the first 4 years when I was here, I'm not a crier. You won't see me cry. I've learned my lessons well at the age of 4. Someone should point a gun at me, and believe me, it will not faze me. The only thing that fazes me is when a child is hurt. Okay? But I'm also aware that we are all God's children. And when I came here the first 4 years and I saw differences between one group of Jews and how they talked about other, I cried. I cried myself to sleep for 4 years. This is why I came to Israel, to see Jews treat other Jews like this. This is why I had to lose a father and never knew my father, because Jews should treat like this other Jews. When I was 19 years old, my first husband was a Hebrew school teacher. And I was 19 years old, and I came to a meeting, and these older women are trying to impress the Hebrew school teacher's wife. I'm all of 19. The best time of the week for them is Shabbat. So far, so good, right? The first one says, and you should know, when I prepare my Shabbat meal, I make the most delicious shrimp cocktail.
Oy.
No, noch nicht, not yet. And the other one says, then another one says, well, the best time of the year for us is when we put up the Hanukkah bush. Big mouth at work again. And I say, is that why we had to lose 6 million of our brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers? So now we should have a right to have a Hanukkah bush? We lived there for 4.5 years. Every time I came to shul and there was a meeting and there was an empty chair, it went like this when I went towards it.
Wow.
Rabbi Gifter from Tell's Yeshiva in Wickliffe, Ohio, once said, I was so angry when I heard that he said that. We Jews earned the Holocaust by the way we were. Who lost the first 2 temples? What was the reason that we lost the first 2 temples? Why?
Well, it was Sinat Chinam, which is...
What have we learned since then?
We have to have Ahavat Chinam. That's the answer.
But how many years have we been around already? Isn't it time that we already learned? Isn't that a choice that we should consciously make? That we put out a hand to another Jew? When I was going to public school, a girl by the name of Stella Chaplieri, that's the only name I remember from school, she took me home every day so her mother could give me milk and cookies. The Jewish girls wanted nothing to do with me. I was a greener. You know what a green is?
Sure, but this was a non-Jewish girl who took you home.
Yes, a Polish girl, Stella Chaplieri.
And the Jewish girls not.
Supposed nicht. I was a greener. I spoke funny. Not only the Italians thought I was, so did the Jewish, upper class Jewish. That was my first experience.
Hi, could I ask, you growing up, could you relate what happened to you to other Jewish friends, or were they interested in hearing what you had to say?
No one was interested in hearing what I had to say. Not the adults. And when I started speaking one time, get over it. It happened so many years ago. Come on. Get on with it. Look at you. How many years did the war end? And you're viewing and you're videoing this? Isn't it amazing? It's still interested in it. The first the first gathering of hidden children, there were a group of 5 people that decided, now the hidden children are dying as well. Let's gather all the hidden children and do a compositive of the typical hidden child, of what the history, because we're dying out. So they hoped, maybe if we're lucky, maybe 500 will sign up. Even if 300 signed up, if we're lucky. 2,000 signed up, 1,700 attended. Okay?
Where was it held?
In Marquis Hotel in Manhattan. That was the first hidden child gathering. And they did a composite of the typical hidden child. On drugs, alcohol, multiple divorces, highly overachievers. I fill these two, but thank God not these two. I have always been an overachiever. Why is a Holocaust survivor an overachiever? Do you know why?
Maybe they're very grateful for being saved, or
For justifying your life. Why am I living and they're not? So in that case, what we have to do is we have to be giving back and giving back and giving back to justify why we're alive.
why you were saved.
Yes. That's why we're overachievers. And when you have the lighting of the candles every year, these overachievers,
So true.
that's why. Because we have to give back. God, you spared us. So we have to show, God, it's okay. I'm giving back. I'm giving back. And how I give back is through hospice. I'm able to help people go home in peace. That's a gift.
I just still can't believe, when you were growing up, no one came to you and asked, tell us how
They
it
didn't
was.
want to hear. And when we had what I told you, the gathering, people came to the mics. They were supposed to there was a panel of questions that was supposed to be.
What year did this take place?
When did this place? In the early I'm not sure, I think 1991. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Then there was another conference like that in Israel. And by then my oldest son was living here. And I went to the first one because of my husband. We got married, and after a few months he decided I was certifiably crazy. Why? You open up my freezer, you open up my pantry, and it is so full that you can't even put a piece of paper in. Why do you suppose I have that?
Because
Because I starved
you
three
starved.
times
Sure,
in
you
my
lacked- you
life,
lacked.
and that's my security blanket. I go grocery shopping and I'm in heaven. I see all this bulk of food. When the Russians started coming to America and the social worker would take them to a grocery store, they would buy a 50-pound bag of potatoes. What are you doing? There's only 2 of you in the house. Oh, no, I have to buy that because tomorrow they may not have it.
it's real. It's
Yes. And are we suffering it today? We still are. We're still carrying it. You meet me and casual conversation, you'd never know that about me.
never in a million years.
That's right. Because I have learned to have choices.
But your husband, he could come to terms.
Not the slightest. He thought I was not well. So the reason I decided to go to that first gathering, because I read the workshops they were going to have. There were 2 workshops there that fascinated me. One was learning how to trust again. The second was for the spouses of the survivors. I signed my husband up for the spouses of the survivors, and I went to the trust one. And I will tell you what happened in both. My husband comes to that meeting. The facilitator was herself a survivor, and there are 25 survivors sitting in the room. And each are telling their stories. And after hearing the stories, one spouse says to the other, "Oh, I see you met my wife or my husband." "No, I don't know your wife or husband." "But you did. You just..." All of them had the same stories about their spouses. We all had the same stories. My workshop, trusting. Again, a facilitator, 25 people sitting in the room. No one is opening their mouth. Quiet. The facilitator said, "What's going on? The purpose of this workshop is that we should share and learn from each other." No one's opening a mouth. Big Mouth opens her mouth, and I said, "There's a reason why we're not opening our mouth." "Really? What's the reason?" "There are 2 people sitting here that are not one of us." "Oh, that's impossible. Only survivors are allowed to come into this." And I'm telling you, there are 2 people here sitting that do not belong here. I just felt it. And so the facilitator said, "Are there two people sitting here that are not a survivor?" Two hands meekly go up. They were reporters and they wanted to hear firsthand. They were thrown out of the room, of course. Then we all opened.
How did you know?
You tell me. I don't know. I'll give you another example. My son, in 1997, called my oldest son. His oldest daughter went with her class, at that time she was 17, went with her class to Europe, visiting these different cities where the Jews were slaughtered. She wrote me a letter from one of those places. Savta, I could hardly wait to get back to Israel, to my own country where they loved me and cared for me, instead of walking on these roads that were filled with our blood. And so she got back to Israel. It's a week before school. She goes down to Ben Yehuda Street to get a haircut, get ready for school. And there a suicide bomber blows himself up. And that's what she sees: a head going this way, an arm going that way, a foot going. Police came, questioned. She finally got home. I'm hearing this on the radio, that there was a suicide bomber. I immediately called my son in Israel. Yossi, where's Esty? She was about to sit down in the barber chair when this happened. Tell me, how is she now? Is she quiet or is she angry? She's quiet. This is September. I said, you're in trouble then. It's better if she would be angry, dealing with it and getting it out. She's taking it in. That's depression. That's terrible depression. By November, he really got scared because it was bad. So he comes to Esty and he says, honey, anywhere in the world, let's you and I go. Just you and I, vacation. Abba, I don't care where we go, but wherever we go, I want Savta there.
Wow.
So he calls me up, Mom, what's the possibility you can meet us in England? Why, he tells me, honey, tell me you'll meet me at Heathrow, you'll pick me up on your way, and we go. That's exactly what happened. We get to the hotel room, unpack, and then I said to Esty, come on, these old bones need a walk. Let's you and I take a walk. I needed to be away from my son, just she and I. And as soon as we were away, Savta, can I ask you a question? Again, I say, thank you, God. Thank you. I don't get it. Every time, because we would go, I married David in '86. Every year we would come to Israel. And we would stay at my son's. Every time you come, you dance. You hug us, just like my mother. You hug us. You sing. I don't get it. I didn't begin to go through what you went through. It's destroying me, this suicide bomber business. And how can you be the way you are? So I asked her a simple question, like I told you before. Honey, what did my enemy want of me? They wanted you dead. What's my best revenge? You live? Bingo! That's your best revenge. Live. And that's what she's been doing since. She's going to turn 40 in her next birthday. 3 daughters.
You gave her like the best advice.
And that's what I tell to
The
all.
life lessons.
And it's no rocket science, is it? Taking care of these hospice people, it was no rocket science taking care of them. Just think, have a heart, have compassion. Think. That's all it takes.
Wow.
Choices.
So Chaya, can I just ask, because it's so difficult, people think, look, what happened in Poland, it's amazing, you had very bad Poles that beat you up, but then you had this woman.
These 2 people.
This woman who was prepared to give her life
Yes,
to save you.
yes. By the way, that conference that I told you, the Hidden Child Conference, people came up to the mic. They were supposed to have questions asked of them. Instead, they started telling their stories. They couldn't stop. To this day, you meet a Holocaust survivor, many of them still can't leave the Holocaust.
Yeah.
We had a lady like that here, and I tried, I couldn't get her away from the Holocaust.
But I think you're unique because your experience,
I made a
you've
choice.
overcome. You're not overcome, but you've.
No.
I don't know what the right word
What
is.
I'm doing is I'm living with it, and I'm making a choice every waking day of my
That's
life.
the message.
Yes, I'm making a choice.
And it's a positive choice. It's an incredibly positive
That's
choice.
how I have my revenge against those that wanted me dead. I live. That's my best revenge.
And I think if there was a message that you could give to anybody, this is the message.
So God gave me 3 sons. He took one back at the age of 49. But at the age of 49, he accomplished more in his 49 years than people who would live at a ripe old age. 5 of them couldn't have accomplished what he did. He being Dati, his Rav was Rabbi Reuven Feinstein. He went to him and he said, Rabbi, if I'm going to reach the unaffiliated Jews, it's got to be where they are. They're on the internet. That's how you can reach them. So the Rav told him in detail how he can do it, and he got on Facebook. He was the Facebook Rebbe on the internet. He had 12,000 followers. The day he died, it became 40,000 followers.
He had Smicha, your son?
He was called Rabbi, he never got smicha.
And the advice was from Feinstein?
Yes, that was his Rebbe.
The family from Reb Moshe Feinstein?
Yes, his son. Rabbi Feinstein had 2 sons, David and Reuven. That was his rabbi. And he's still the rabbi to my grandkids and to his wife. And what did he do? I'll give you an example of what my son did. He would have discussions on the Facebook, back and forth. People would Skype him, key to him, questions, answers, blah, blah, blah. He would answer. One woman Skyped, I use the word Skype.
Put on Facebook.
Put on Facebook,
Posted
all kinds of questions. He asked her phone number. He called her and had personal conversation with her. She lived in a little town in Denver, Colorado. No Jews. Her kids came home. She had daughters. Kids came home with Christmas songs. And she was very bereft. She said, I don't know what to do. She didn't know and much Yiddishkeit, neither did her husband, but she didn't want her daughters to have Christmas songs. So my son asked her, this is over the phone, never meeting this woman. Well, if you could have a choice, would you do something about it? Yeah, but, well, how about moving to Denver, where it's a Jewish community? Yeah, but I would need a job, my husband would need a job. What did your husband do? What do you do? He contacted Denver, spoke to the rabbi there, spoke to the school there, and asked the rabbi who has jobs in these professions, spoke to those people there, and each of them was offered a job. So he calls back this couple. By the way, I have a synagogue for you. I have a rabbi for you that will take you under his wing. I have a Hebrew school that they can go to, a day school. And there are 2 jobs that are waiting for you. Are you willing? Are you serious? And so they went to Denver. And then she got in touch again with my son. My children are coming home with Hanukkah songs.
Wow.
With all the Yom Tovim, they're teaching us about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and on and on and on. Never met them. A mother complains that her 2 boys got off Newark Airport. They lost their talis bag in Newark Airport. My son goes to Newark, goes to the lost and found, finds the talis bags, finds where the mother is, delivers the talis bags. That was my son.
Unbelievable.
His older son wrote a book about his father called Making a Difference. Why that title? Because every time he spoke to anybody, especially his children, he would say, now don't forget, you make a difference. That's the name of the book. You go to Schenke's and they've got the book. It's worth the buy. Then you will find out the kind of son I had.
He did definitely well. Wow. That
So-
is amazing.
I have 21 grandchildren that are David has, but they're all mine. David will tell you, the only reason she married me, she wanted my grandchildren. To which I reply, you're right. So mine are 21. The ones in Staten Island are Haredi, but with open arms, not with like this. Because that's the way my son was raised. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew. And when I gave his eulogy in an Orthodox synagogue, and that poor rabbi really got tsuris because he let a woman up on the stage, and there were 4 rabbis, Rabbi Harris, Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Harris, who's the head of the Chafetz Chaim Yeshiva, Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Lehrfeld of the synagogue, and then came this little kapzen of a mother. And I said to the people, my son believed a Jew is a Jew, a Pinteliid is noch a Yid. How dare we make differences between each other? Didn't we have a Hitler? When he marched us into the gas chambers, he only had one room and it was called Jew. He didn't ask, are you Reform, are you Orthodox, are you Conservative, He just had one room. And when he burned us alive, it was every Jew. No. He knew we were one people. What's the matter with us that we don't know that? And I'm still asking that question. Yes. That's my husband and my...
I just want to... I'll open up, but I just want to... Thank you so much. I'm just going to... For 1 second.
Come in.
Okay.
He's going to open.
Okay. I'll open. Chaya,
Roshan, open the door.
I just want to thank you so much for... I've never met somebody who's so positive, who's gone through so much, and who's
It's a choice.
And your message for out there
choice.
is you have the choice.
That's right. And we all have it. You don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be a doctor. You can be a plain pusher to the Yid. A plain pusher to Mensch, which is available to all of us.
Chaya, that is one of the most amazing messages.
That's it.
And thank you so, so much.
I thank you. I thank you for willing to have the passion and listening.
It's been the greatest honor and privilege. It really has.
I thank you, sir. I thank you. Thank you. My husband, David. David, say hello to Dr. Glassman.
We said hello.
Oh, you already said hello?
We said
and
hello.
This is Roshan, our helper.
Thank you so much, Chaya.